Do you wish machine quilting felt easier? Are you struggling to move your quilt over your sewing table? If this is something you're struggling with, I have a new solution for you. This is Sew Steady's Quilt Suspension System. And in this video, we're gonna put it together and I'm gonna teach you how to use it. Hello, my quilting friends. My name is Leah Day and I am a long arm and sewing machine dealer. You can find my website at leahday.com, and I make weekly quilting videos, so make sure to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on the next video coming out soon. So in this video, we are going to put this together. We are going to learn how to clamp up a quilt. I have actually been suspending my quilts for years, and you can do this in a DIY method if you want to just go to the hardware store. You can get clamps, bungee cords, and hooks or something to hang it off of the ceiling or the walls. And that was why my solution, my DIY solution, was not very popular. Most quilters, turns out, don't really want to put permanent holes in their ceiling or walls. So Sew Steady has come out with a quilt suspension system that does not have any screws. You simply clamp it to your sewing table. It clamps, it can fit even really, really thick sewing tables or really, really thin spaces too. So it's really going to be versatile. It's able to go into any situation and be able to lift your quilts just enough to make it easier to machine quilt. So let's get started putting this together. I can't wait to teach you how to use it. So here's what it looks like whenever you open the box, and this is the set of 2 clamps, and I have already taken one and started to stretch it out. So that's really the first step, is to open this out and start to untwist it, because we want this white part, that bar, to really be more of a bar holding up our quilt. And this is flexible. You can see how it's bending, and it is very, very, very stiff, but it is going to have movement in it. This is not going to hold your quilt up stiffly. So how do we assemble it properly? We're going to take the nut, we're going to slot it on, making sure that the threads of the nut are pointing towards the ball, place the ball into the clamp, and then line up and just twist that on. Just go on ahead and tighten that down. And that is going to also just be slightly stiff. The more you tighten it, the more stiff that's going to hold in place. You want a little bit of movement there, but not a lot. And then how this is going to work, this is our clamp for our quilt, but you can see just how big that space is. You have this roller, and what that's designed to do is you wrap your quilt around the edge of that roller, and then it very gently grips the roller and your quilt. I think this is going to minimize any kind of crease lines that you might get in your quilt if you left it suspended for a long period of time. Now, don't worry about how thick your table is. As you can see, we have got a lot of range here in this clamp, and all you're going to do is slide it onto your table, and you've got, you see the grippers? This is going to protect your table. There's not going to be any damage done by this quilt suspension system. And that was the main criticism. When I started drilling holes in my ceiling and in my walls, a lot of quilters didn't like that idea. But this clamps right to your sewing table, so there's no damage, there's no screws, there's no nothing. You just clamp and it's done. So this is ready to go. All right, let's learn how to get the most out of this quilt suspension system. I have loaded up my quilt here. I've got my needle down so that way the quilt's not going to move where I am wanting to start quilting. And this is really the area that I need to have flat so I can easily quilt it. And in order to move it, I'm going to probably be pushing it straight through the machine. So you kind of want to think about where you're going to be going, how you're going to be moving. So I want this area of the quilt lifted, kind of nice and loose. I don't want it to be super tight. You don't want to pull it too hard, or the clamp is probably just going to pull straight out of the clamp. So here I've got my little tube. We'll call that the hair roller. That's what it looks like. It looks like those old hair rollers. All right, I'm going to roll that around it and then clamp. And that looks really good. I like how that feels. Do the same thing to the back of the quilt. So the back, where it puddles up, you find that that really is what is going to add the extra weight and bulk to your quilt. So if you can lift that and take some of that weight up and get it off the table, it's just going to feel that much easier. Now grab my quilting gloves. Another tool I have on this is my free motion glider. Love that. Definitely makes free motion quilting feel a lot easier. All right, now I'm going to start quilting my design. And you can just see how the clamps are gonna move as you're quilting. You can see that back clamp kind of bending and wiggling. That's what you want it to do. You want the clamps to move with you, but then eventually you're gonna reach a point where you'll kind of feel them tug against you. That's when you know it's time to stop and reposition, just like we have to stop and reposition our hands, so it always feels nice and comfortable to do our quilting designs. We also have to stop and reposition the clamps on the quilt. And just in case you wanted to see me reposition the clamps, always make sure that your needle is in the down position. That locks the quilt in place so it's not going to wiggle away from you. And then just shift, kind of figure out, again, where are you going? What needs to be lifted slightly in order to have that feel a little easier? I'm going to show, I think about right there. That will be good. Most likely, once you set your back clamp, because that's going to be pulling as the quilt, slides forward that way, most likely I'm not going to need to change that one very much. But again, this is going to be something where you're just going to have to get a little practice using it. And the more you use it, the easier it's going to get, the more you're going to know how to use it effectively. Now, our Sew Steady Quilt Suspension System is available in both a 2-piece set and a 4-piece set. I was working with the 2-piece set here in this video, but as you can see, I really think I need 2 more clamps on this quilt. It's not being lifted enough through the middle, but my sewing table, I actually built it into the wall, so there's not a lot of places to attach these clamps to it. So I might still use my ceiling. I already have a bar attached. There's a low ceiling, a loft in my crafty cottage, so I might still end up using my ceilings for this clamping system, and that's just fine. You kind of have to get it into your sewing space, figure out how it's going to work, and give yourself a quilt or 2 to really get the hang of using it. Whenever I first started using my DIY quilt suspension system, the same thing. You kind of have to figure out how often you're going to have to stop and reclamp. And you're not going to clamp your quilt and just start quilting and quilt forever. You'll have to stop and reclamp probably every 4 to 10 inches of quilting that you do on your project. So I hope that you're excited about giving this a try. Come and find both the 2-piece and 4-piece sets at leahday.com/suspend. Until next time, let's go quilt.